There's too many questions. There's just too many. I'll show you it works.
What the hell is going on here?
I told you this project is terminated. I'm calling security.
Caffeine will kill ya!
Hi, this is Michael Uslan. You're listening to Batman on Film.
Talking about the tales where the shadows crawl. Chapter by chapter, we've covered it all. From the capes and cowls to the darkest night. Every film, every fight, a fan's delight. Turn the page, Gotham's glory awaits. Batman on film, where legends create. Oh, we ride through the Gotham skies. From the bat's rise to the villain's eyes. Turn the reels, where the story is right. I'm Batman on film, the legends alive. Break down the madness, scene by scene, where the city's pulse and dark dreams convene. From the old to the new, the saga unfolds. A vigilante sail in the echoing cold. Step into Gotham where justice turns. Through words and whispers, the bat returns. Oh, we ride through the Gotham skies. From the bat's rise to the villain's eyes. Turn the reels where the story's bright. I'm Batman on film, the legend's alive. Pages turn as a saga unfolds. Join the journey in this timeless quest. Batman on film stands above the rest. Oh, we ride through the Gotham skies. From the bat's rise to the villain's eyes. Turn the reels where the story is bright. I'm Batman on film, the legend's alive.
Welcome to Batman on Film, chapter by chapter, a Batman on Film podcast, batman-on-film.com. This is the podcast on Batman on Film where we look at the Batman movies and break them down chapter by chapter, scene by scene, over-discuss, over-analyze, the whole drill there. So we were on chapter 5 of Batman Forever, Caffeine Will Kill Ya. Javi. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right, man. Got off work this morning, bright sunny day here in the ATX, and threw on the Batman Forever soundtrack on my drive home, so I am pumped. I'm ready to talk some of the top grossing film of 1995.
All right, well, let's get to it. And by the way, I'm merely Bill Ramey, the founder of Batman on Film. So we're kind of at the Riddler's origin story part of Batman Forever.
Yeah.
Part 1. There's 2 parts, actually. There's this part, and then when we do chapter 6, that'll finish it up as far as the Riddler's origin is concerned. But when we left off, Bruce Wayne had put the old kibosh on Edward Nygma's plans for the box because he wouldn't
manipulating brainwaves.
Yeah, he wouldn't just sign off and we talked about it last time.
Well, it just raises too many questions.
Yes, it was like he said he was going to set up an interview. Call my assistant. We'll talk about it, and then Nygma was like, "It won't be good for me, and I need the answer now. I deserve it." And Bruce Wayne tells him no, so he's butthurt. He's butthurt. And yeah, that's where we're at. So we go back to Wayne Enterprises, where we see Edward Nygma. He's working on the box. And, he's mumbling to himself, mumbling, he's too many questions, too many, he's obsessing over what Bruce Wayne had told him. He's working on the box, where he is then caught by Fred Stickley, his boss, who was already annoyed with him for his confrontation with Bruce Wayne previously. And he catches him working on the box, and he's like, I told you this project was terminated. So this leads to a little altercation between Ed Nygma and Fred Stickley. So, Javi, just where we're at right here, what's your thoughts?
When I typically revisit Batman Forever, like, this is honestly one of those chapters that I kind of skip because I'm not a Jim Carrey fan. But having said that, like I've just never liked his comedic shtick. Not to say that I haven't liked him in other movies, like his more dramatic roles where he's kind of toning it down. It's just I never necessarily found him that funny. But this is one of those rare exceptions, though, where I feel like what he did back then, what he was known for, works for this character because he's like a more extreme Frank Gorshin interpretation. Yeah. So it doesn't irritate me as much. But I mean, this is a little bit of a more campier scene, not as serious as some of the other stuff. And I tend to skip it a lot. And I'm sure Lauer is like shaking his fist at me right now. But having said that, like rewatching it, like, and just appreciating it for the craft itself of the movie, of the storytelling. Like, the production design is great. There's so much detail in his little office, and he really is giving a good performance, whether or not it's like something I care for. Like, he's putting it all in there. And if you listen to the commentary, like, he thought a lot about what he was doing. Yeah. And was a perfectionist, according to Schumacher. So there is a lot to enjoy and take in if one is willing to be receptive to it.
Yeah, this is where he starts really kicking in with the over the top stuff, which, like,
very Looney Tunes.
He's extremely talented, obviously, but he really kicks it up, into the campy, over the top, silly. But there's also a dark element, a scary element to him as well, that he goes, I mean, he can, like, just in an instant go to that dark, and it with his facial expressions and everything. So, and you see a lot of this in this scene, I think.
There is, like, especially towards the end when he's dealing with Stickley, like, he goes from that wacky screwball comedian to, like, there's something sinister, like there's this gleam in his eyes that you later see in, like, something like The Number 23, where there's a depth there that at that time we didn't get to see a lot of in Jim Carrey. It's just starting to poke through, and there's a little bit of a sense of danger almost in his eyes,
Yes, for sure. So he whacks Stickley over the head, and that's where we get the line, caffeine will kill you. I'm not.
You're not going to try it.
I'm not saying it, delivering the line like he did. Caffeine will kill ya. There you go. It's the best I can do. Wax him with the coffee pot, and proceeds to begin to test the box on Fred Stickley, because he had told Bruce Wayne he just needed additional funding for human trials. He hadn't really tested it out yet. I don't know how you would test it out on mice or,
Right.
because you wouldn't get any feedback of what they're seeing.
Well, they show later on in the movie like a dog, right? Like even a dog is watching the
Yeah.
box and he's like
Yeah.
watching cats
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah. So, I was talking with, um, on the last episode, I had Patrick Johnson on here, and we brought out, the box is a silly looking contraption, looks like a
Yeah.
blender, on someone's head, but
This is like the
it's,
proto box though.
yeah, it's like this day and age that what it does is not too far off from reality. There
Yeah.
is
The Oculus or anything.
yeah, yeah. And I'm sure, I don't know if it'll be in my lifetime, but I would imagine at some point it progresses to where there's a even more immersive virtual reality experience.
Well, you've got like the
Yeah,
Oculus and the Meta Quest, which has its own Batman Arkham game now, which I hear is really good.
yeah,
But even this past Super Bowl, we saw a Ray-Ban ad where they had like their VR glasses and they could look at things with them. And yeah, I mean, a lot happened in 30 years.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So he's testing it, and Fred Stickley is seeing an old man fish, essentially. Uh,
Yeah, as a kid, I always kind of thought that maybe he was seeing himself
yes,
idealized like fishing. Um, but in the commentary, Schumacher clearly states it's this other actor who's like this renowned guy that's been in like a movie or two of his. So it's not Ed Begley Jr. When you watch it in, bigger screen, higher definition now, it's a lot easier to tell like, oh yeah, that is a different dude. But back in the day, I always kind of wondered if he was supposed to be seeing a mirror version of himself doing that. But yeah, there's just a lot of like he's really enraptured in that fishing show, which I wouldn't have struck him as a fishing kind of guy. He seems like this
yeah.
corporate stuck-up type, but like he's really into it. He's really enthralled, and whether or not that's him or part of the effects of the box, like this proto version of it at the first time, where they're
Mhm.
kind of working out the kinks, but Begley gives a really good performance in as much as he's invested in what he's seen or not seen.
It gets kind of silly because
Yeah.
then Ed Nigma puts on another box contraption, and this is where he discovers that he can suck the brain waves out of people's minds, and he grows smarter. And there's a lot of this, like Ed Begley Jr. as Fred is going woo, woo and all this, and making silly faces, and Jim Carrey does a dance and a song and dance, and
With some weird robotic noises in the background.
yeah, yeah, it's a little much, but thinking back again at the time this came out and how big Jim Carrey was at that moment, that's I'm sure
That's what
people
you're paying
enjoyed
Jim.
it. That's what,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's what you're
exactly,
paying Jim
exactly.
Carrey for. And yeah, as good as an actor as Val Kilmer is, like there's probably a good portion of the fandom or the audience that was going to see Jim Carrey be
Sure,
Jim Carrey in a Batman movie.
yeah, yeah,
Like as
absolutely.
as critically acclaimed as like The Doors and Tombstone were, I kind of feel like in '95 that Jim Carrey was probably the biggest name on that marquee at that moment in time.
He was probably Val Kilmer's top billing, but yeah, Jim Carrey was clearly a draw to that box office draw to that movie. Uh, so we got all this carrying on between Fred Stickley and Ed Nigma. He shuts it down, and goes on to, I think Fred says, what happened or something to that effect. And then he goes into this, that mean Enigma, like it was like a unexpected side effect,
Yeah.
I've grown smarter, I forget the exact, I didn't write down the exact quotes. If you remember them, you feel free to throw them out here right
Yeah.
now.
Okay.
Um, and basically, as I said, he discovered that why he's connected to the box with, and I never really got the reason
For the
why
transference.
why he had to have one on too. If it's like
Reading
virtual,
Stickley's brain.
I guess, yeah,
Yeah, why does Nigma have to have it on too?
yeah,
Maybe he wanted to see it what Stickley was seeing also.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
So, so bottom line is Edward Nigma is getting smarter and smarter and smarter as long as this transference of brain waves and whatnot by the box's own is taking place. And Stickley asks him what happened, whatever, and he's again explains he use your brain waves to get in my head and make me smarter, and Stickley goes on a just
I'll have you up on charges.
yeah, all this stuff, and above else, you are fired, you know. So
Yeah.
there's also, I noticed with Carrie, once he shuts it down, what a rush and all that. He talks, his demeanor is even like, I'm very smart. It's what he's trying to come off. Do you get that?
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
And so Stickley's giving him just ripping him a new one, tells him he's fired, and that's when Ed Nygma says, well, I don't think so, and he says it in a real,
I don't think so. Yeah.
he's calm, but it's kind of calculated and a little bit. It's
Yeah.
dark, it's scary, menacing in a way, and pushes him, kicks it, pushes it, that he's in that rolling chair toward that big round window in Wayne
Yeah.
Enterprises, and stops right, at the edge. He's teetering on the
Because of
edge
the box. He still
because of
has
the box.
the
Yeah,
box on his head, and that cord is apparently like 40 yards long.
yeah, and he tells him, Fred, babe, you are fired.
fired.
Yes, or should I say, terminated.
Terminated.
And yanks it off his head, and Stickley falls and gives him a surfs up big kahuna, and it's just,
CGI Stickley falls.
yeah.
Which
So
it's pretty apparent when you watch it in 4K.
What'd you make of there's a lot, there's a lot going on.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe it's just because this is, a Warner Brothers picture, but like I definitely feel the Looney Tune vibe as like he's pushing Stickley through the window, and then you see him panic and go running, after him. Like the way the camera's got like the Dutch
Yeah.
angle, and it feels very cartoony. And as the audience, it's trying to manipulate you into thinking that Nigma's like, oh God, what have I done? And he's chasing after him. And then when he finally catches up to him, you realize it's not because of what he's about to do to Stickley. It's because he wants his equipment back. And I think that, it was directed well in that regard, like it to make you go down that path and then give you the, oh no, he's homicidal now.
Yeah.
And it feels more apparent now, like how much the CGI sticks out. Like it's not bad, but it's a little more clear now as opposed to like a 30-year-old VHS copy in low resolution where things
Yeah.
blended together a little more. So it's stuff like that where you can see the seams a little bit better for better or worse. But did that take it out? Does that take you out of the movie at all when you're
No, no,
rewatching it now?
really doesn't. In fact, I've watching it, and when stuff is CGI.
Yeah.
It's just I thought I guess I don't consciously remind myself, okay, this is 30 years ago, so I'll give it some
Yeah.
slack. I just think it's done fairly well. I mean, I think there's some CGI that we see today that sometimes looks worse,
Yeah.
in films. So
It stands out to me now watching it because I didn't really think about it back then, either because the technology was so new and not as pervasive, or because I was 18 when this came out and I just wasn't picking apart how the movie was made back then so much as opposed now, especially having seen it, I don't know how many times, where you start noticing little things and because you're just looking for something new when you're taking it all in. But I think that, it for being as young as the technology was, like it still looks fairly good, a lot better than some of the more recent stuff we've seen.
after he releases, pulls the box off his head and Stickley falls out of the window down into whatever type of water
Yeah.
contraption, sewer, whatever. It looks
The
like it's some kind of waterfall
It's like
type.
a hydroelectric plant
Yeah,
part
yeah,
of like Wayne
yeah,
Enterprises.
yeah.
I love that shot though, like him walking back up to the security camera because it does feel not just inspired by like the 60s TV show with the how they would always have the Dutch angle for the bad
Yeah,
guys and
yeah.
Batman would be straight on, but it's got a dynamism to it that gives the scene a little bit of energy and makes you feel unhinged alongside with Nigma.
It's that part. He's still obsessing over what Bruce Wayne had told him. He's
Yeah.
still too many questions, too many questions. I'll show you too many questions. And he finally, he says, "Why hasn't anybody put you in your place, Mr. Wayne?" Into the camera, which I'm thinking, okay, why are you giving yourself up? So, you're being pretty obvious. You're looking into the security camera and, clearly it recorded him murdering
Yeah.
Stickley, but we'll find out in the next, later on that,
Everything was manipulated,
yeah, it was a manipulated computer manipulation, forgery.
which goes
Is
to show you how intelligent he got from the box.
Yeah,
Because I mean, Pixar was like a year old, if that. We talked about that the other episode. Like, so to get that kind of, video fakery going on, clearly the box did something to where you could
you know what?
make a CGI Stickley
Yeah,
running out the window.
I first time I thought of that is that probably the box in his new intelligence or boosted intelligence gave him the ability to come up with that, even though I don't know if that technology would have existed in 1995. But on the other hand, this movie there's a bit of
About
timeless
beaming
element.
holograms into
Yeah,
your brain. So,
yeah. So yeah, but we'll get to that part
yeah.
later. Do you think this is kind of where he turns and this with the previous scene and through this one, he went from being obsessed where Bruce Wayne was his hero
Yeah.
to being still obsessed with Bruce Wayne, but in a different way.
Mhm.
I don't know if he wants to kill him, but he wants to better him in
Yeah.
some way, at that point.
Yeah. It's that classic dynamic of, you love someone, you get rejected, and that feeling curdles into the opposite. And that's definitely what we're seeing here with Nigma.
Yeah. It's because as we know, and I should say spoiler alert, but the movie's 30 years old. We know later the box becomes a huge hit, and
Yeah.
there's a gala for it. Bruce Wayne shows up, and he's dressed just like Bruce Wayne with the same glass.
Mole and everything, same
Mole, how's my
glasses.
mole? Yeah. So he's still obsessing over Bruce Wayne at that point. So I think it's a scene, an origin scene, or the beginning of the origin of the Riddler, that like wouldn't work to me in a Batman film today, because we've come to expect
Come a
more
long way.
out
Yeah.
of Batman movies, and comic book movies in general. But I think especially with Batman movies, there's just after the Dark Knight trilogy, then the Batman, it's a very high level of you expect a lot out of them. You're not expecting mindless popcorn
Well,
fun, and there's nothing wrong with mindless popcorn fun, but it's different day and age from when this came out.
I mean, that's all due to your buddy Chris.
Yeah,
Like the Riddler said, like, you've changed things forever.
yeah,
No pun intended there. And yeah, that was a game changer. If you compare, like you and Patrick were talking about, last episode, or was it you and Garrett? Um, but
it was
just
me and Patrick, the last one. Yeah,
the yeah, the Enigma in this movie versus the Nashton
yeah, that was
of
me and
of
Garrett. Yeah,
of the
yeah,
Batman. Like, they're kind of after the same thing. Like, they're very similar character motivation wise, um, but two completely different, takes on it. And as good as like Gorshin was, like, for me, he's my favorite villain of the '60s show.
hmm
Um, you're not gonna out carry Carrie, who was already doing what Gorshin was, just in his own way, adding his own little taste to it. Like, you're not going to go past that. So you got to pivot and go the opposite direction. I don't think that, it, the days of lampooning or doing something in that '60s style, like, I don't think we can go back to that after the two Schumacher movies, especially given how they were received by the audience, and
hmm
how the alternate takes to that, you know,
hmm
resonated so much.
Well, it's kind of like it is like the comic books, because there was a period where comic books, Batman, whatever character, they weren't meant to entertain with a high
Yeah.
level, like you know what I mean, or for
You can't
adults
go
for that.
back to the simplicity of the '40s stories after
Yeah,
Dark Knight Returns or Long
yeah,
Halloween.
yeah, and exactly where, um, like the Dark Knight trilogy did that for Batman and comic book movies. I
Yeah.
think
I've
overall,
always just kind of found it fascinating how you had, Michael Uslan and Bell Melniker, like, made '89
hmm
as, a direct counterpoint to the perception of the '60s show. And
yeah,
and he's been on the show, talked about it, like the dark and serious Batman, the Dark Knight detective, how they firmly established that in '89, and how by 6 years later we went back to the TV show, well, and then took it a step further in the next movie. Like, just how it shifted that much has always kind of fascinated me. And I don't know how much input Mr. Uslan had on this film in particular, um, but I don't know. I've always just been kind of fascinated how we did kind of slide back in that that public perception, especially because there's a lot of comedic sound effects in this movie and the
Yeah.
next one.
Well, speaking of Looney Tunes, we actually see Looney Tune clips
Yeah, later on,
later
Two
on.
Faces layer.
It's I think this was something I think well we know from the Red Diary cut this movie was intended to be or planned to be a little darker, not a little darker, and with there's some a little bit more substance, especially with the Bruce Wayne, the psychology of Bruce Wayne. That's really what the whole Red Diary plot is
Yeah.
about. But it was also they wanted to lighten it up a little bit. And I think it was just an evolution. Once you had Val Kilmer come in, not that he was going to camp it up, but they went from Val Kilmer, they got Nicole Kidman to replace Renee Russo as Chase Meridian because they wanted a younger actress. And then, Robin Williams, bless his soul, he got, he didn't get his chance he's always wanted to be in a Batman movie. He was going to be the Riddler originally, and they went with Carrie. And I think bringing in Carrie really amped up. If it's that, injected that over the top campy silliness that we get at times in the movie. And I also with Tommy Lee Jones, like, was that I probably made a combination, but was he trying to out Carrie at times with some of his antics, or was that also
You have to wonder,
is that Schumacher? Was that Schumacher's direction? Because Tommy Lee Jones didn't like Jim Carrey and told him, what did he tell him? It's
I can't sanction your buffoonery.
Your buffoonery.
Yeah.
So, but yet his Two-Face goes down that route a bit as well.
If maybe he's, trying to not get lost.
Yeah.
Behind Carrie's interpretation. Because I feel like Two-Face in the beginning of the movie does start off really strong.
Yeah.
Especially that opening scene. He is very menacing. And by the end of it, he does get more and more over the top.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a good observation, a valid observation on your part.
I would like to know, they don't talk about it really in the special features, but I think there's got to be a little bit of both, a little bit of direction from Schumacher. He is the director, and he is telling him how to play, that's how we're going to play it. But I would also imagine there was
Schumacher and all his stuff. Yeah.
Streak to Tommy Lee Jones saying, okay, you're not going to out act me or crazy act me.
And you can see too, like from his perspective, like he just won an Academy Award for The Fugitive.
Yeah.
So, he's probably feeling really good and confident and, like he has more pull for the first time. Like, cause that's what, he'd been acting for 10, 20 years before Batman Forever, but it was that nomination, that win for The Fugitive that really put him on the map, that took him out of wherever he was, whatever status he was, and made him A-list.
Yeah.
But, he's the straight man to Carrie. Like he was never not going to be the straight man to Carrie. And I could see, feeling some animosity towards that.
One last thing, and this is we see it more. We haven't seen it really yet, but it's coming. But like Jim Carrey's hair, he's got the longest
multiple wigs.
Hair. Yeah, I guess we'll talk about it more when we get there. But that is something that kind of bothered me because it really didn't bother me when he went. They clearly show him with the reddish hair that's long, but when he becomes the Riddler, it's he's got a very even more red, almost a cartoonish red, flat top, and then we have him in the in the party scene with Bruce, he's got his hair's dark and it's Bruce Wayne. It's
Yeah,
clear.
he's got the
It's
Val
his
Kilmer
it's his
coif.
it's his
Yeah.
hair. It's just his actual hair and his hair styled that way, not the wig. So I guess we'll wait for that. But it's just that was one little thing that always, even though as much as I like the movie, it always like, what's the deal with the hair, man?
I can see that. And again, that goes back to one of those things where I didn't really question it in 95,
Yeah,
but now I'm
yeah.
like, oh, like he clearly had like 4 or 5 different wigs that they used throughout the production. Like I doubt his hair, like he grew his hair out for the scene we're talking about, only to
Yeah.
have it, shaved. Because he's only in like 2.5 scenes with the long hair before he takes on his persona.
All
Um,
right. Yeah, go
one
ahead.
one thing I wanted to mention before we wrap up is just like the production design in general. Like I don't think I've really appreciated it as much as I do now.
With
And
Barbara Ling. Is that?
yeah,
Yeah.
I th and there was a Twitter account. I forget what it was called. It might have been like Batman Noir, Batman Forever Noir, where they would take um screenshots and then make them black and white and seeing like those compositions and how they use light like it was such a cool vibe, and it made me appreciate what kind of staging Schumacher and his director of photography were doing. and
Hmm.
and I, in addition to like I'd love to see a Red Diary cut, I'd love to see this movie in black and white, because a lot of people do complain about the various colors and the
Hmm.
neon and everything. And while Schumacher is always going on and on about like they're making a comic book, and so it's got like those Killing Joke style colorings where like this building's orange and the next building's purple and they're all in the same shot. Like no one would light a real
It's
city like that,
it's
but it's
like the
like the Dick
40s.
Tracy movie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like the 40s comics where they would be a city skyline and the buildings were all those different colors.
yeah.
So I get what he was going for there. I get
But if
and
you
yeah,
if you took out some of the sillier sound effects and cast the movie in black and white, threw in the Red Diary stuff, you would have like a totally different movie that I
sure.
think a lot of people would find, more acceptable to their palates and their
Yeah.
Batman sensibilities than what we have now.
Even though I always bring up when we say that, because it is true that Batman Forever was a huge hit and people
It
loved it
was
in
number one.
1995.
It
Yeah.
was number
So,
one. I thought it was like amazing for a
yeah.
time. It was like I said earlier, like for a brief moment, like this is the best Batman movie ever because we've
Yeah.
got, Robin and Batman and yeah.
Well, we're going to be getting to that. First though, we have chapter 6 coming up. Will be the second part, essentially, of the Riddler origin. And we shall discuss here very shortly on Batman on Film, Batman Forever, chapter by chapter. All right, Javi, anything you want to mention um, plug wise before we go?
Yeah. Of course, I've got my Up to Speed with Wally West YouTube channel on the Comic Binge fairly regularly, which is also a YouTube channel. Batman on Film Legacy contributor Chris Clow and I, along with our friend Paul Herman, have a monthly episode talking about Grant Morrison's Batman called Nights Never Die. And I've got a James Bond podcast, the 007 Files, where we recently had to do an emergency episode because Amazon bought the creative control away from Eon Productions.
Yeah.
And of course, batman-on-film.com, where I've got Batman and Robin reviews, Batman and Robin Year One reviews, Catwoman, and coming soon, once I get some editing done, we'll have an unboxing and review of the Tweeterhead Batman 1/6 scale maquette, the blue and gray variant. There's actually 4 of those statues using the same mold, so it's pretty crazy.
I don't think I've ever gone down the rabbit hole of Grant Morrison's Batman. with you yet, have I?
I mean, we talked about it in like one
Yeah.
of my early episodes of like what was one of my favorite stories, but we bring you up every episode. Like Chris takes an excerpt because he likes to recap like what were people saying about the run at the time. And so we always go back to, like Newsarama and to your reviews of what you thought,
It was mixed. It's
almost
a mixed. I'm
20 years ago.
I'm
At this point, you're still loving it. Where we're at in the series, you're still loving it.
I'm conflicted. That's a good way to put it. I'm conflicted with its overall story and legacy. That's a good way to put it. Conflicted. All right. That's a podcast for a different day, maybe a social hour. All right. So I am Bill. Just go to Batman on Film, batman-on-film.com for everything. And announcer Rachel will finish up here. We will catch you next time.
You have been listening to Batman on Film Chapter by Chapter, a BatmanOnFilm.com podcast revisiting the cinematic adventures of the Dark Knight, scene by scene, chapter by chapter. Follow Jett on Twitter at Batman on Film. For BOF news only, follow at the Batman on Film on Twitter. To become a BOF patron, go to patreon.com/BatmanOnFilm. To advertise on BOF, visit advertisecast.com/BatmanOnFilm. For Jett and Team BOF, I'm announcer Rachel. Authoritative, definitive, the original. Batman on Film. Established in 1998.
Batman flying night sky. Jett had a dream, now we're flying high. Since 98, it's been online. All the Bat fans gather and shine. Dark Knights and Gotham tales, rocking through stories and never fail. We love the Bat, right from the start. Batman on film, straight to our heart. Jett's on the mission, spreading the word. Every bat flick, every unheard. Classic tales and brand new Batman movies bring shades of blue. From the Joker's laugh to the hero's call, Batman time, standing tall. We love the Bat, right from the start. Batman on film, straight to our heart. That family full of cheer. Since 98, we feel the thrill, keeping the Bat vibes alive still. We love the Bat, right from the start. Batman on film, straight to our heart.